the relationship between intensity and duration is really the most important part of any training program. When it comes to overload of the individual, you need to quantify what the best intensity is and then determine the duration of that. And the question you keep asking yourself is what combination of intensity, duration and frequency, in other words the training load, gives the greatest adaptation. So you're trying to find that optimal load between intensity and duration to get the best training adaptations for the individual. Now, to find this, it's quite difficult with human studies, because what it means is that you need lots of groups of humans and you need to train them at a certain intensity for a certain duration and then measure the adaptations for that. And those studies haven't been done because they're expensive. It's hard to get people to do the same thing all continuously. And so a lot of the physiology and a lot of the knowledge we get from the intensity duration interaction comes from studies on animals, in particular rats and mice. And one of the best studies that has been done is by Dudley et al. In 1982. And what they did, they looked at 6 training intensities. They had 6 groups of rats with 19 different protocols. And they trained them for 8 weeks, 5 times per week. And then they looked at cytochrome C concentration. And they measured that in red muscle and white muscle. Because unlike humans, rats have muscles in their legs that are completely all red or slow twitch, and then individual muscles that are all white or fast twitch muscles. And so it's easy to measure concentrations of proteins. Can you remember where cytochrome C comes from? Can you think back to your exercise metabolism from exercise physiology? Cytochrome C is part of the electron transport chain in the mitochondria, and it's used as a marker for mitochondrial volume. So the more mitochondria you have, the more of this cytochrome C, which means more mitochondria means more aerobic capacity. So the greater the ability to break down fats and carbohydrates in the presence of oxygen. And with training, what we're trying to do is increase the number of mitochondria. And so we measure the cytochrome C to look at that concentration of mitochondria or volume of mitochondria in different fiber types. So this is what they did with rats. Now rats, of course, aren't humans, but believe it or not, we have about at least 90% or more of the DNA of a rat. We're very similar, particularly with muscle, and so rats are used as a model for humans. Although, again, I stress that they are rats, and so it can't be 100% translated into humans, but it gives you a good idea of adaptations that can occur in mammals. So what they do is they get the rats on treadmills, they run them along for certain durations and intensities, and they work out the VO2 max of the rat. Yes, you can measure the VO2 max of a rat, and they set the treadmill at a certain speed equivalent to that to the rat's VO2 max, and they do that for different groups, and then once they finish training, the rats are sacrificed, and they look at the muscle, the white and the red muscle of their vastus muscle of their hind legs. So this is the study, Influence of Exercise Intensity and Duration on Biochemical Markers in Skeletal Muscle, from the Journal of Applied Physiology, if you're interested. So this is one graph from their results. So on the y-axis is cytochrome C concentration, millimoles per gram of muscle. Okay, so obviously the higher that number, then the greater the number of mitochondria in that muscle after the training. And these are the different intensities of training. So they train them at the treadmill at meters per minute, so 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and that's equivalent to 62%, 73, 83, 94, 105, 116% of VO2 max of the rat. So, and they train them, yes, above their VO2 max for short periods, just to see what would happen. So here we have cytochrome C as the intensity increases in the red vastus. So this is the red muscle, so the slow twitch muscle. As the intensity increases, then cytochrome C concentration increases. So they started off high because it is a red muscle, and hence it's got a fair bit of mitochondria in it already. But then you train it, it'll increase more, and eventually you get to a point where it just plateaus. So you can just keep training and nothing will improve. And that's because, remember from previous lectures, I've talked about the recruitment of muscle, and most of the slow twitch fibers, I should say, are recruited very early, and so it doesn't matter how hard you go, they're fully recruited, and hence they will be the adaptations will occur, but they won't get any greater as the intensity increases because they're already fully recruited. If you want to get an adaptation to a muscle fiber, you have to recruit it and contract it. Whereas down here we've got the white vastus, okay, and they start off quite low concentration compared to the slow twitch muscle. As the intensity increases, we see this steep increase in concentration of cytochrome C. So we're getting more mitochondria in these fast twitch fibers because they're trained at higher intensities. We're recruiting those fast twitch fibers at that higher intensity. Okay, so the take-home message is, if you recruit the fiber, it will adapt, and adapt by increasing the number of mitochondria. More mitochondria in fast twitch is good. It improves their fatigue resistance, increases the amount of power that the muscle can develop over a longer period of time. So it's always a good thing. These next graphs look at the duration and the intensity of the different groups. And again, cytochrome C here, the concentration of it on the y-axis. And this is runtime, 30, 60, 90 minutes per day. And each one of these symbols is the different intensities. So down here in the legend here, we've got the intensity. So open circles is 10, and then we've got 20, 30, 40, and then we've got closed circles at 40, and then square, and then triangle at 60. So that's the fastest, highest percent VO2 max at 60. This is all the slow twitch muscle, and this is the fast twitch muscle, the white over on this side. So we'll look at the slow twitch first, and notice that at the lowest intensity, we do see an increase in cytochrome C, but not nearly as great as the higher intensities. And then if we go to the 60, which is the filled in triangles here, notice that they can't exercise for more than a few minutes, 10 minutes at most, at that higher intensity. Remember, it's above VO2 max for these rats. But look at the adaptation. So they're not exercising for very long, they're fatiguing very quickly, but because they're exercising for at a higher intensity, they're recruiting all their muscle, and so we get this bigger adaptation. But it's no bigger than at the lower intensities here, not that much bigger than the intensities at 20 and 30 and 40. So that's because most of the fibers, or all the fibers, are recruited at a lower intensity, and hence if they're recruited, then they'll adapt. But when we look at the white vastus, the fast twitch fibers, at the lower intensity, nothing happens. Not much happens at the 10 or the 20. A little bit at the 30, then at the 40. But at the 60, then we have really big adaptations. A big increase in the concentration of cytochrome C. Again, they're not running for a very long time because the intensity is so high. But because they're recruiting all the muscle, then that's the stimulus to increase the number of mitochondria in that muscle. So the take-home message is that if you want to get an adaptation to muscle, you need to recruit it. So if you want adaptations in fast twitch fibers, then you need to do some very high intensity, shorter duration efforts. To get adaptations in the slower twitch, then you can have lower intensity. And what this study does show is the inverse relationship between intensity and duration. So if you want, if the intensity is high, then the duration is going to be low, such as here. But you still may get some very good adaptations in both the white and the red, or the fast and the slow twitch muscle.